Hello and welcome to episode 230 of the Paint All the Minis Paint Ramble podcast. 230. Best time for a dentist appointment. Tooth hurty. We put the show, swiftly moving on, we put the show together so that you can have something to listen to whilst you are sitting at your painting desk, painting your miniatures of any genre, scale, or game. Our aim is to have a relaxed and genuine conversation with somebody who's involved in our hobby at any level, from top to bottom, because we've all got our own stories. We believe that these genuine and organically occurring chats offer a different and possibly deeper insight into the guests, the sort of conversation that you might have whilst you are sharing a cup of tea, a pint of mild, or a caramel frappuccino, or something like that. Sit at your hobby desk and paint your models. Listen to the chat. We really do hope that you enjoy the content, and I really hope that I bring out some interesting points from the people that we have on the show, no matter who they are. In this episode, I speak to Roger Yates. Roger is a key and integral part of the Duncan Rhodes Paint Academy brand. Roger plans out and puts together the amazing painting tutorials that we see on YouTube and also on the Duncan Rhodes Paint Academy website. You can join that group for a monthly fee, and you get access to significantly more content than you can see on YouTube. So if you've not really ever heard of it, or you're kind of vaguely aware of it, you can check out some of the Duncan Rhodes Paint Academy videos on YouTube. If you like them, if you enjoy them, if you value them, you can head across their website and you can join up. I think it's $5 a month. I don't know. It's up to you to decide if that's worth it or not. Roger and I talk about his formative steps in the hobby, starting with his early life in South Africa, along with all the steps on the way to the present day. You can listen to all that in the show. I'm not going to spoil it here by telling you the different types of things. I will say leopard skin loincloth. I think I will say I will say that. You can pick that up in the chat. This is episode 1 of, more than one, because early in the chat we identified that he's just done so many cool and interesting things that we couldn't possibly fit them all into one show, and I didn't want to do him or the Duncan Rhodes Paint Academy a disservice by trying to shoehorn as many different kind of monikers into a little bit like a modern house. Yeah, if you look at like the list of a modern build house, it seems like the greatest house in the world, but actually if you try and shove too many bullet points into a brand new house, it ends up being none. A camel is a horse designed by a committee. So I wanted to make sure we gave Roger the right amount of time, the right amount of justice to be able to tell his story and all the awesome stuff that he does and to bring that to you. So hopefully he's going to come on again in the future, and we can talk about the many things that we didn't talk about, such as the Tooth and Coats paint range, their new partnerships with competitions, gaming conventions, also the future of the Duncan Rhodes Paint Academy, and also anything else that we missed along the way. We really do hope that you enjoy the show. Don't forget, you can reach out and message us at Paint All the Minis if you so desire. You can email me, paintalltheminis@gmail.com. You can head across to the Facebook group, Paint All the Minis. You can check us out on Blue Sky. We're on Blue Sky. So Paint All the Minis on Blue Sky, Instagram, many of the different social media things. You can kind of give us a hello and wave your hanky at us, and we will shout cooey back at you, I guess. But anyway, that is enough of the pre-ramble. If you're a post-rambler, stick around and we'll have a little bit of a chinwag in private over there. But thanks a lot to Roger for coming onto the show. We really appreciate it. Really interesting chap. And yeah, enjoy. Let's go.
Paint all the minis that you can. And when you paint your minis, listen to that podcast with Dan Adams, that is.
What is good? To paint your minis, see them deployed on the table, and hear the lamentations of neckbeards.
So hey, I am here with Roger. How's it going, Roger?
Yeah, not bad. Yourself?
I am okay. So, hearing your accent and having a bit of a chat in pre-show, you're not a native to the UK. So tell us a little bit about where you're from.
I was born in South Africa, way back in '75. Grew up there most of my life. Grew up on the coast. in the province of Natal, by a city called Durban, a little bit further south. Went to school there, went to high school and university, did quite a bit of like surfing, spearfishing, all that kind of stuff. Ironically, miniatures and the hobby, and that wasn't even on my radar at that point. But I did love science fiction and fantasy. I watched Aliens and Predator and Terminator countless times. I enjoyed things like Willow, the Princess Bride, and all that sort of stuff. But miniatures and that, I'd see the artwork and stuff, but the miniatures weren't on our radar because we were so far apart from everyone. We were right at the bottom of the Northern Hemisphere, really. Mm-hmm. And it's just very, very hard to get anything. But we did see the artwork and that. I had a very good friend of mine who was an incredible artist even when he was young, and he would work with some universities in America. And what would happen was they would create their own RPGs, and he would create the artwork for them, and then they would then pay him, not through cash, but they'd send him some stuff over. And that's kind of how we started to learn more about, the Warhammer hobby and stuff like that, but more the artwork. We'd see all the John Blanche artwork and all that kind of stuff and go like, wow, this is really incredible. I wonder what this is. And never heard much about it until I moved into the UK in 2001. I immigrated over.
Yeah. Let's just pause. Yeah, let's just pause the kind of move into the UK thing. Let's just chat around your background. So you mentioned a lot of interesting and exciting things that possibly, definitely don't exist in the UK. You mentioned like spearfishing. So is that like a common hobby in South Africa? Is that something a lot of people do, or is that more of a niche thing still?
No, it was on the coast. Like I used to do, 'cause where we lived, we had really good waves, really big ones as well. We had great fishing and things like that. So because I lived literally on the beach, we'd finish school, grab our boards, run down to the beach for the whole day, for the rest of the afternoon, go surf or go whatever, hang out and stuff. Uh-huh. And if the waves were cooking, and that would be out there, for hours. And then come back home in the evening, have dinner, and watch a bit of TV, and pretty much be knackered out and go to bed. And wake up early the next morning, and if the waves were good, we'd quickly try and grab a wave before school or whatever. Nice. And then as you get older, got less and less chance to do that. But when you're younger, you're just free, so you can go and do all that stuff. Yeah. Spearfishing was something that I picked up a bit later with some friends of mine in high school. So we had a guy who lived literally on the beach, and we'd climb down a cliff face type of thing, like a secret path sort of thing, down to the beach and go on the reef there and just go spearfishing. Nice. Pair of goggles, of shorts, some flippers, and our spear guns, and off we'd go out. Probably swim, I don't know, a couple 100 meters out, and then just go down and go hunt some fish or whatever. And that was
proper hobby.
And hopefully get something and not get eaten by a shark. But
yeah, I've got a friend from Croatia, and he was talking to me the other week about he used to go hunting octopuses with a harpoon, like a mini harpoon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he said he used to kind of find like little reefs, little coral reef, or a little reef with some holes and things like that, and he used to have this little kind of like a pistol harpoon effectively, and he used to find the octopus and things like that. So yeah, proper hobbies. I used to do like tiddlywinks and chess or battleships, and you guys are out spearfishing and stuff. So obviously you mentioned there about moving to the UK in 2001. So as you think back to your time in South Africa before you emigrated, is there anything that you really missed that you really wish you still had?
I miss the weather. The weather over there where we lived anyway was great. Was really warm. We get a bit too hot sometimes in summer, but we'd consider it cold if it was 12 degrees Celsius. We'd be dressed up like it's 0 degrees in the UK. We'd be moaning, it's too cold to do anything. It's mild. But yeah, I miss the weather. You miss the people a bit, and then obviously the scenery. And we were very fortunate where we lived in that it was gorgeous. You always had like wildlife parks and stuff not that far, so you could always go in. Like as Europeans might say, go on safari or whatever. We'd be able to go out for the day and go, watch lions or go see some elephants and stuff like that in the wild. Because we're very lucky with that. Yeah. But yeah, we were just the weather, and that was nice. That's probably the thing I miss the most, and the outside life sometimes, because you're outside all the time because of the weather, which was nice. Yeah. So you're pretty much indoors, which is why I can see something like the hobby we call today, where you can see it's so popular up where you might not have that weather, because it's a great thing to do indoors and keep you occupied.
Yeah,
So I can see that feel for that definitely. Yeah.
Is there any food? Is there any cuisine from South Africa, or maybe a drink from South Africa that you really miss?
Ironically, South Africa is really known for its wine, but I can't stand wine. I'm not a wine drinker. I love good old-fashioned British ales, especially and the American ales, the New World type of ales. And I got that through I wasn't really into those kind of stuff until I joined a band. And they're all like, we play like, doom rock and stuff like that, and they're all of their ales. So I started to get a taste for it. But in SA, there's a thing called biltong, which is like a jerky, but it's not dried over smoke or anything. It's air dried. That's good. You can get it here, and it's really good. It's really high in protein and lean on fat and stuff. So, if you're a bodybuilder, which I'm not, it's really good for you for that sort of thing. Really clean protein. But we used to have it as snacks, even as a baby. Your parents would give it to you when you're 6 months old, and it's a hunkered piece of meat. And,
chewing on a bit of meat.
Dry. Yeah, like a dummy, right? Yeah.
That's cool, man. But you mentioned that you didn't get
culture, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's always interesting to hear about those sort of things, because there's things that we kind of take for granted living in the UK or living in the US, and it's just really interesting to broaden your horizons and see and hear the different things that people are interested in. And so you mentioned that as you grew up, the hobby as we know it, tabletop gaming, war gaming, painting wasn't really a thing. But you mentioned that you were kind of aware of it, but never really got into it.
Yeah. So
okay, good.
Yeah, I remember, like, I'd see art books and stuff. I've always been a collector of art books. I love them. It was my one real true passion in collecting things is art books and then miniatures. But I remember seeing like the John Blanche artwork and stuff, and I can remember a famous piece that he did, which I didn't know was quite well known, but it was basically orcs versus I think it was Bretonians. It was quite a tall piece, a black and white ink piece, and I remember looking at that for hours, going, "Wow, this is really cool. I wonder what this is." It kind of reminded me a bit of maybe Lord of the Rings and stuff, which I'd read when I was a kid. But obviously I didn't put the two and two together at that point. But I also had a friend of mine who was in my block of flats that I lived when I was younger, and he was from Britain. He was from England, and we used to play World War II games with soldiers. Yeah. So what we'd do when it was cold in winter, we couldn't go out, we'd go up to his place, and he'd have like a certain gauge of trains and all the houses and stuff. So we'd build a battlefield with train tracks and houses and everything. And then we'd have these small, maybe about an inch high miniatures. You buy a whole bag of these soldiers. They weren't great quality or anything like that, but I'd have like the Americans and he'd have the Germans or whatever, and you get a pack of 100 of these little men. And so we started to unknowingly just make rules. So we get our toys, go, what should we do? Should we play? We had no idea what war game it was. So we just started to come up like, well, what if we measure a distance and we use our ruler and we can see if you can hit that guy over there, and we just take turns. We didn't roll dice or anything. And then eventually dice game mentioned, little did we know, at the time we were actually just playing our own war game. They were kind of just making along as we went. We'd make notes and almost write rules for it, but unintentionally, if that makes sense. Just so we could keep the notes of it. Yeah, and then we'd keep the battle there. If I got called to go back home or whatever, if my mother shouted for me, I'd have to go back home. But we'd keep the battlefield in his room, and then we'd come back the next day if it was still cold and we couldn't go out to the beach or anything like that, and we'd continue the battle. That was probably my first foray, if you will, into wargaming, and it was kind of unintentional. Because I had a real fascination with World War II when I was younger. And that's because my grandfather, he was both my grandfathers. One was a Royal Marine in World War II, and then the other one was in the South African Air Force, and he was a navigator on bombers. Okay. So I was just fascinated with the stories about that, So obviously I just put that into the World War II games because we just knew it. And then obviously his grandfather was, I think his grandfather was a Spitfire pilot, I think. I'm not sure. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but that rings a bell.
And you mentioned about artwork, about loving artwork. Yes. And you also mentioned about having a friend who would draw artwork. So were you into art at school, and were you actively pursuing that, or was it just something that you enjoyed?
No, I did. I always loved drawing. I just learned some very, very bad advice, and I never learned the fundamentals, so it kind of knocked me back a bit, and no one ever really taught them that well. But I did. I used to sit and draw for hours. I draw big battles, or I draw just a lot of fantasy stuff, monsters and creatures, and or try and draw a scene from my favorite film, things like that. And I kind of kept it up a little bit over the years, here and there. But yeah, I just love artwork, try and break it apart and figure out how they've done it, and, look at the color theory and stuff like that, the composition and things like that. Which kind of led me then to what I got my degree in, which was filmmaking. In South Africa, so I was kind of filmmaking, was television and film, to be honest.
That's what I was going to kind of meander along to, because obviously we know from the intro that you haven't heard, but I have introduced you as the more artistic, film orientated person within the Duncan Rhodes Paint Academy organization, right? So you got a degree within, this was still in South Africa, right? You got a degree there, or did you come to the UK to study?
There were only 2 schools in the whole country that did filmmaking or video production of any kind. So when I did it, digital wasn't a thing then. Everything was done on tape or film. So I met some really good friends. As you do at university or whatever, you kind of have things in common, which is a great thing to go for. You meet people there that you have really, really you have a lot of things in common with. And I was one of the few people in the country that knew about anime, right? Okay. So, and that was because of my friend who was the artist. Some of the stuff he would get would be anime from Japan that the Americans would subtitle themselves in English, and then we'd send a copy. And my father used to work for a huge company in South Africa, and that they had their own video production unit. So what would happen is I would go in there in the holidays and work with them, but I'd also take the tapes and I'd have to transform them from NTSC format, which is American, into the PAL format, which is for the UK and South Africa and Australia. So I transformed the tapes so we could all watch it. And then that's how we got into it. But because of that, I made some really good friends who had never seen anime before and they'd heard of it. And on my first day of university, we were walking up to a lecture introduction, like one of these, on the first day they kind of show you around where your lecture halls and all that are. And I had to take a walk to another campus, and I heard these guys walking in front of me, and they were talking about, have you heard this thing called anime? And I was like, haha, this is my moment.
Been waiting.
I'm introverted. That was my segue in, right? My way in. So I went and said, I can show you this really good thing called Akira, which was the first one we had. Which, if you're into that sort of stuff in science fiction, you know that Akira is just a groundbreaking animated film. And they were like, you really got a copy of that? They'd heard about it, and so invited them over to my place and we watched it. We all just became really firm friends.
Nice.
And we used to make a lot of our own films, but we didn't do like a lot of the other kids on the course and stuff like that were trying to do really art stuff and that, but we were doing like Zombie Slayer X and all this really weird stuff, like real 50s sci-fi and horror and all that kind of stuff. So we're a very close-knit group of guys that all had the same sort of vision. And we just spent 3 years at university just making all this stuff and learned a lot by it.
Nice. So film has been a big part. Film has been a big part of your life then. So as a kid, like pre-travel to UK, like what were some of the favorite films that you'd watch, and what are some of the films that you really still enjoy to this day?
I love Die Hard. I love Predator. Aliens is one of my favorite of all time. What else would I watch? I loved RoboCop. We had to sneak that one in here and there. Films of the 80s, because I grew up in that. The Arnie films, Commando and that, which is ridiculous. In fact, we often laugh about that film here in the studio when we're talking, because we got a new employee, a young guy called Jack, who's helping with the video stuff, and he'd never seen Commando, and Duncan and I are like, you got to watch Commando. You got to see how Arnie takes a guy's head and his scalp off with a lawnmower blade. It's ridiculous, and he somehow manages to beat a jumbo jet to a island in the Caribbean somewhere. I don't know how, but he does it, and it's
it doesn't matter. So don't worry about it. Don't think too much.
Don't worry about it. Just go and take a break. Leave all your thoughts behind and just go and enjoy it. It's great. It's entertaining. The greatest villain, the greatest and worst villain of all time. I'm the same. When I was growing up, it was exactly the same. Like I loved movies. I was very fortunate that my best friend had another friend. So she was a girl. So he had like a girlfriend, but not a girlfriend. He lived next door to this girl, and they were also friends. But her dad had a giant movie collection. This is when everything was on VHS still. And so we used to, whenever it was raining in England, which happens a lot, we used to go and knock next door, knock on this girl's house and be like, can we borrow some films? She's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So we used to get like 4 or 5 different VHS tapes and take them back to his and just spend the
the afternoon, spend the day just like watching all these films. And like you said, it was amazing. You didn't really need to think so much. You just kind of turn your brain off and just kind of like watch them.
Absolutely.
And then my friend had some dogs as well, so between films we'd go and take the dogs on a walk and we'd chat about the film. But same thing, like True Lies, Commando, Aliens, all the kind of 80s, 90s kind of just action films. Not always action films, but just really good times. It's really fun memories. So it's really good that you kind of had something similar. And not only did you enjoy that yourself, but you also took that into university too, and you're able to kind of speak to other like-minded people about that. That's fantastic, mate. I
think film inspires a lot of people in many different ways, whether it's creatively or there's 100 different ways I think film can inspire, whether you go into that industry yourself or whether you take that into artwork or whether you take it even into music, whatever. And that's why I think it's important. It's a wonderful thing that we have, and we should cherish it as far as I'm concerned. I just wish they'd make a bit more entertaining stuff these days, but
Yeah, I mean that could be a whole different podcast in itself, talking about that subject.
Absolutely.
Right? So we left you when you were at your university. You were the belle of the ball now because you'd introduced people to anime, and you were kind of enjoying that with like-minded people and making kind of not necessarily mainstream film, but more kind of different things. So what then took you to the UK? Was it a Finnish university and then straight to the UK? Did you get a job within South Africa and then move? How did that whole Finnish university and go to the UK? How did that happen?
I struggled to find work after I finished because there wasn't a big film industry at that point. There's quite a big one now, but there wasn't at that point, and we didn't have much TV and stuff. So I got a job, working doing corporate video and that. But I just found, and that's where I had to learn how to do photography. Because funny story, when in our last year of university, you had to get a job, right? In order to qualify, you had to work for 6 months. So it was like, I've got to send our CV around the country and hope I can get something. And luckily I got something in the city where I lived. So anyway, I turned up on my first day and the guy gives me a photographic camera and says, I need to take photographs and go develop it. And I'm like, what photograph? I don't know how to develop film. And he's like, don't you do photography? And I'm like, no, I did video work and production. And he's like, I never read the things. I'm so sorry. But anyway, he kept me on. And he taught me how to develop film. And I went and I did a lot of photography out there. I did a little bit of, when they were having this, it's not quite combat photography, it's not really true, but it's a similar thing in that you've got to go into, quite bad areas and you've got to go and take photographs when there's riots and stuff like that. I did a bit of that. I once, I had to hide in the back of a vehicle once because they'd heard I was in this township and they wanted me dead. So I had to hide in the vehicle.
Why? What, did you just take on photographs?
I'm not sure. Things were just kicking off. You got to remember, this is like...
We don't like anime. Get out of here.
In South Africa were quite high. And I was doing a thing for churches, ironically. And this guy came screaming up. He's like, you got to get this guy out of here. So I had to hide in the back of a car with people sitting on the back seat lying as flat as I could, and they put blankets on me and then they put their feet on top of me, and then they had to drive me out of there through a couple of roadblocks, so that was quite something. And then there was another time when there was a riot, and I went into Houses of Parliament that was in our what's it called, like a province, like your state. And I went in there and I wasn't allowed to take a camera in, but I snuck one in anyway. And I was pretending I was holding the camera, just took a couple shots. And my boss told me to do it. He was an ex-National Geographic photographer.
Okay.
And he said, if you can, get dressed in a suit, take the camera, just don't hold it up to your eyes and just sneak a couple shots. We might save them for the library, we might use them. So I was sitting in there and it was boring as hell. So I left and I went outside to go hang out a bit in the sun, And there was a demonstration happening and starting to turn violent, and I was like, I'll get some good shots for our library for this. And because I wasn't a true photographer, I was taking the photographs and I didn't judge the distance they were away from me from the lens I was using. Okay. So they were a lot closer than I thought. And I'm just snapping away in my suit and everything like this. And then this guy grabbed me around the collar, and he was a professional photographer. This guy really knew it. And he's like, we got to run. And I was like, what do you mean? And I moved the camera from my eye, and I was like, oh, well, they're really close. And he just grabbed me, ran into this building with his newspaper offices, and we just locked the doors. And he's like, just get to the top floor. So we get to the top floor, and we're just waiting for them to calm down outside, and then just had to go and get my car and drive home after that. So
and we for sure, man. And that reminds me of a film, you've probably seen it, but there's a war photographer called McCullum Yeah, I heard of that. There's a
I've not
really
seen that,
really
no.
interesting documentary movie called McCullum. Yeah, it's really good, and it's about a war photographer.
I'll check
But
that
man,
out, yeah.
Yeah, man, for sure. But dude, there's no wonder you wanted to shift away and maybe go to the UK. So what? I get that. I'm joking. That wasn't a reason. But yeah. So for what reason did you come to the UK, and what were the first steps with that?
Well, I've got ancestral heritage here. You know, my grandfather being the Royal Marine and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And my dad's British, so my mom and dad decided they wanted to move back over to the UK.
Okay.
So I was like living on a farm at that point, you know, and to be honest, I kind of just got a bit sick and tired of walking around with a gun at times. Like I borrowed a gun from an ex-girlfriend's father, you know, just to keep safe. You know, the farm's quite dangerous and stuff. And then eventually I was like, my dad said, hey, why don't you come over? You know, you'll probably find some film work here and stuff. So I was like, yeah, why not? You know, I've got nothing to lose. I've got nothing yet keeping me here anymore. My family's away. My sister had also gone over. So I was like, yeah, why not? I'll give it a go. And yeah, I went over and that was it.
So what did you expect? What did you anticipate in doing? You mentioned like film work there. So is that what you were looking for initially? Is that what you got into? And what were your first feelings of the UK as you moved over?
I found it was weird. I found it very strange coming here there was no bars on the windows, right?
Yeah.
And I remember driving with my uncle who came to fetch me from the airport. I'm like, something's a bit weird. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And I realized there were no bars on the windows. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Seeing police with no weapons was weird. Just like, how are they going to defend themselves? You know, but of course it's very different, right? But no, I loved the people. I've made some of my best friends I've ever had over here. I worked for Games Workshop for nearly 20 years, not over, just nearly 20 years. I left before my 20th anniversary, if you will. But literally, I was here for maybe 3 days, and my parents had moved to Nottingham. Okay. You know, and I went into Nottingham City Centre, having a look around with my cousin, and I walked past the Games Workshop store, and I just stopped, and I was like, what is this? And, you know, the miniatures just kind of grabbed my attention straight away. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. Look at these. They're nicely painted, these little sculptures. I don't know what they were. So I went in there, excuse me. I went in there and I had a painting lesson, and I painted an orc. This is when they still had the old inks and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. And then they had a help wanted, literally a help wanted poster on the door. So I inquired to the store manager and said, what's that help wanted thing? And he said, oh, it's head office are looking for people. So I was like, I don't want to go down to London, you know, because I thought everything big was in London, right? I just didn't think Nottingham would have a cool place like Games Workshop there. And then he went, no, it's in Nottingham. So I was like, what? You see, just walk down the canal. So 15-minute walk from here. So I was like, okay, cool. So I went there and I applied for a job because I needed some cash. And yeah, I ended up working in the manufacturing. And that was it. On that Monday I started, and I was there for 19 years.
That's cool, man. That's awesome. So, like, within a couple of days, like a few days, we get into England. One of your first jaunts into an English city, and it all started from there, man. That's really exciting.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's talk about those first formative years. Then you mentioned that it was in Nottingham, right? So you were living in Nottingham, and then the factory was in Nottingham also. So talk to us about the people of Nottingham, and then maybe talk to us about how you maybe enjoyed the first few months, the first few years in that role.
Yeah, I made a lot of good friends, you know, in manufacturing. So they were doing distribution at the time, and it's kind of where it is now in Willow Road. They just moved there. They hadn't been there long. It's an old gasworks plant. And they just moved in there. So yeah, I started, you know, picking orders and things like that, and I loved it. I was suddenly surrounded by something I could identify with, if that makes sense. Everything started to make sense to me. You know, I was like, wow, I'm feeling really inspired looking at all this. This is amazing. The artwork was amazing. The miniatures were amazing. You know, the stories. And they used to have was the old mezzanine floor. So it was this old dusty floor. This is where all the old stuff was, because back in those days, Games Workshop just kept everything, right? They wouldn't just release something for a small amount of time and they wouldn't get rid of the range. They just kept everything. So you go up there and there was all this really old stuff. There was the Inferno magazines, there was the Mordheim stuff, and stuff that maybe they'd only sell 10 a year of, right? But they still had it. And you just go up there, look at all the old magazines and the town crier magazines and stuff like that. So, I'd often go sneak up there and say, I'm going to go pick, but I'd be up there in the house just reading all this stuff, just trying to absorb as much as I could. Go, wow, this is incredible. Look at it. It's just so imaginative. We never had anything like that where I grew up. So it just sparked something inside of me that, I was just happy to be around. Sure. I often said to people, like, I wasn't earning a great wage at that point. I think I was on like £8,500 a year. But it didn't bother me because I could have been in a place, working with nuts and bolts where I wasn't happy. Yeah. But here I was being surrounded by this stuff that just inspired me and just, brought me joy.
Was it kind of like was it kind of like when you got to university and you'd started talking about anime, or was it kind of the same because you're starting to bump into people, and the people that work in that factory, picking and packing, they probably like the stuff as well, the same. So did you have a lot of interesting conversations, and did you also start getting involved in the games and playing as well?
Sometimes. Now, the weird thing in the factory, my first day there, one guy came and said, yeah, don't let anyone know that you like Warhammer. Yeah, they'll give you a hard time.
Oh, really?
I was like, wait, what? So I was like, oh, really? He says, yeah, but I think he was just, taking a bit of the joke. But often we get some people in that weren't into Warhammer. They were just there for the job. Yeah. But there were a lot of people, and you just sit and talk about it, and you'd see new releases come out, and you'd be like, because you see them out months before they would come out, because obviously we're building building up the stock levels and things like that. Mm-hmm. And, I remember seeing the Lord of the Rings box set, the Fellowship of the Ring box set when it came out. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even know there was a film coming out at that point. And I was like, they're doing a Lord of the Rings thing? This is amazing, And then we got shown the trailer for the film, and I was just like, oh my God, I have to go and see that. And, a whole bunch of us from manufacturing went to go see it. Cool. On opening day, we finished our shift and off we went, and we had fancy seats in the back and all this, but we're going to make a thing of it. Yeah, and it was just a game changer, that film, for me. But a lot of the people were in it. We would, back in those days, Bugman's Bar was for staff only. Yep. So on a Friday night, you would, you finish your shift or whatever, you go up there and you go for a couple of beers, and the place would get rammed. And that's when you'd meet people from, other parts of the business, So you would be, you go sit down, you sit and have a chat with Jez, Jez Goodwin and those guys, and everyone was just open and just having a great time. It had a real non-corporate feel to it, a real indie feel to it back then. And it was amazing. Some of the best work times I've ever had. Even though I was working in manufacturing, which I loved, I was still around this thing that just you felt like you were contributing to something amazing, even if your role was small in it, and it was great. I miss it. It was really good.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing to mention. That was a question that was on the tip of my tongue, actually, was like how aware of you, like, 'cause you're obviously at the tip of an iceberg, but how aware were you of the other things that went on? So as you kind of enjoyed your time picking and packing, that's not where you stayed. So how long did you stay there? Mm-hmm. And then where did you go into then?
I wasn't picking in that for very long. I then got promoted to do planning. I got offered a job to go and do assistant planning, and that was to plan the warehouse and that. I stayed in that for a while, and I enjoyed that. It was a great team we worked with there. And then from there, I went, after about a couple of years of that, we built a new warehouse, which was across the road, called EuroHub. We built that. And that's when I made the first video for Games Workshop, actually, because the manager at the time wanted something to inspire the team, and it's like, oh, can you make us a video, because he knew I had a background in it. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'd made a couple short films at that point, and I had a camera and stuff, and it's like, yeah, I'll do that. And I made a video for it and stuff, and obviously word went around and people remembered it. Okay. And then I joined a department called Central Operations, or Central Ops, and basically what they were doing at the time was forecasting and more kind of bigger planning and things like that, manufacturing planning and stuff like that. So I trained up in that, and then I was given, I had to look after the US and Australia and plan them, and then I'd start developing the paints, not developing the paints, that's a lie. I would they brought the paints over into the UK, so we had to start setting up that production. So I'd work with the manufacturing guys, and when they were setting that up, and we work out the planning. We were involved in the planning of Fine Cast, which is a story in itself. So we did that. And then a job came up for they wanted to start doing videos, and I was like, yeah, I'll give that a go. Mm-hmm. And then they put up the job, and they hired me, and that was it.
Nice. So what sort of you mentioned 2001 coming to the UK, and then I'm guessing it was pretty soon after that you started working in WW. So when did you start jumping across into the video side of things? What sort of year would that have been?
That was about 2010, I think.
Okay. So it's a long time. It's nine years of doing a lot of project management and organization stuff, man. Like that's
we did a lot of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And how did you find that?
The only thing I never got to do was go to China, which I wanted to do. I never got to travel there because we had a warehouse in China. And I had a teammate. She was amazing. She ended up becoming a manager in the studio. But she used to go over to China all the time and tell us all these great stories. And I was like, I've got to find a way for them to send me there. I've just got to find a way, because I production planned everywhere else in Games Workshop. I'd play UK, Australia, wherever, but I'd never got to do China. And I wish I had. And then they closed the Chinese factory and they moved everything to the UK.
Right. Well, you're more than welcome here for a cup of tea, mate, anytime you want. But there you go. That's interesting.
Awesome.
So, what did the production and the planning side of things and the projection? What sort of stuff did that teach you? And were you as interested in that as their film and other things, or is it always something that you just kind of got through and maybe not as quite?
I just kind of got through it. My first couple of weeks in Central Ops, I thought, wow, I'm way out of my league here. This is for smart people, right? These are people that do forecasting and the spreadsheets and that they were making, and to be honest, I actually thought I'd made a mistake. It's like, wow, I can't do this. But excuse me, I'd kind of got my head around it, and I saw the interest in it, in looking at planning and stuff like that, and I just took it from a different angle. In that I thought, I'm given a job to do, I'm just going to give it my best shot. And I've never been one that's afraid to ask questions if I don't understand something. If I don't understand something, I'm just going to ask somebody who does, and they can teach me. And so I fought my way through the first few months, and then it all just clicked. And I found things like forecasting very interesting. It's literally an educated guess with tea bags and a bunch of mathematics thrown in there, and you hope for the best. But they did have quite an interesting thing I always thought was quite funny. So if a new army was coming out, if you collected or played that army, you were banned from the meeting.
Right. Yeah,
because you would be like, of course it's going to sell well.
Everyone's going to buy it.
Everyone will buy it.
That makes sense. That's cool.
It was quite interesting. But my real passion, if you will, lay in the video and the creativity side of that.
And so were you doing anything? Were you doing anything in your spare time, taking over with that, or is it something that was just on the back burner whilst you kind of did other adult things?
I ticked along a little bit. I had one of my friends that I was at university with. He moved over to Canada. Mm-hmm. So we'd stay in touch and that, and we'd go and see each other. And when we were there, we'd just make a short film for fun, or whatever. So when he came over, we made he wanted to make a short film in the UK because obviously locations were different and things like that. So we kept up a little bit with that. I made a 30-minute horror film that I submitted to some festivals, but I got rejected, which is cool. But at least I got a rejection letter, which I've got framed. But it was fun to make, that's what it was about, and then cool. It's like, it was quite weird though, because when we started the TV studio, the guy who started it, our manager at the time, he saw the benefit of it. YouTube was just in its infancy, really, and it was quite difficult for him to get the approval. But he got the approval because they eventually said, okay, we'll give it a go, and they gave him a budget, and we went and we built I got hired and we built a studio. We brought in another guy to come in. And we just had a great time. We were just literally given free reign, to do what we want, just try and make things cool. But we had no budget, we had minimal stuff, so we had to try and make everything work and learn as we went along. And I had to relearn a lot of stuff because my background is all based on analog. Right. In fact, I learned digital editing on Adobe One.
Okay.
The very first version of Adobe is how I learned to do it, and that was at that place where I did the photography, because I had to do a little bit of video work here or there. Mm-hmm. But it was a long time since I touched it, and then you had to quickly relearn all the new formats and how compression works and all of that. Where it's shot on film or on thing, it's very different on tape. Mm-hmm. So that was quite quick, but I got my head around it very quickly, and then that was it. We just got to make stuff. which is cool.
So as you first started, because it's amazing to be, I always think it's amazing to be there at the start of anything. Being there at the start of anything is always really interesting. So can you remember like the first meetings you had about kind of like what was the intent? What was the objective? And did you have set objectives, or you just like, we'll do some stuff and see how that goes, and then we'll just invest in the things that are popular? Like what was the approach?
So at that time, Games Workshop release schedule was far more structured than it is now. And what I mean by that is you'd have like a month of, say, Space Marines coming out, right? Mm-hmm. And in that month, the guys in the stores and whatever would be, just trying to get people interested in Space Marines and stuff like that. And it might be that they release a couple of the new sets first, and then week 2 they'll release a few more sets. Week 3 might be some characters, and week 4 might be, I don't know, let's just say novels, for instance, or whatever. Yeah. So it was very structured, so that you had to make content for that month. So what we'd do is we'd make teaser trailers for the new miniatures and stuff like that. And we just go into a meeting and say, "Oh, boss, we want to do this." You go, "Yeah, okay, do that." Yeah, but there was we like I said, we were given quite a lot of free reign to do stuff. He would just have final approval on it, and then he'd come and watch and make sure we were doing the right thing, every now and then. But once he had trust in us and we were doing the right thing, he just let us be, and we'd just make stuff, and then we just show him, and he'd just double check things for us to make sure we hadn't, done anything off message, as it were. Nice. Yeah, so it was great.
I bet it was, yeah. Like you're saying, just having that freedom to be able, because it's a world that you're interested in. It's kind of like the marrying up of many loves, right? It's like kind of, well, I really love film, but I really like this whole world now, and so it kind of that was like the perfect role that you could get within it. And it's amazing that you stuck around. It's amazing because 9 years is giving 9 years of your life to anything is a big ask. It's not as if you kind of waltzed through the door and got exactly what you wanted straight away. You had to like bounce around, and you had fun, and you learned stuff and different things, but you kind of gave 9 years in one direction, and that opened the door in the future to the thing that was even better. So
I'm very lucky with it.
Well, no, you're not. You worked really hard. Lucky seems to suggest that you don't have any part in it, I think. And I think that you've got to engineer opportunities. And so you engineered that opportunity, and a certain amount of luck obviously needed to occur. But if you'd gone into the factory and gone, no, this isn't for me, and bounced out, or at any point during that 9 years, you'd kind of just, been an ass and no one liked you, or you didn't help your team out. If you weren't a good egg, then that wouldn't have happened for you. They said, "Oh, you might be interested in film, but you're not a good team player." So you engineered that opportunity, mate. And then when that opportunity came, you were at the forefront of people's minds. So that's amazing. So
thanks, man.
Yeah, no, well, you still go, I'm just reflecting it back here, mate. So you're making film stuff. You're not front of house though. You're not the face in front of the camera quite often, or were you at that point?
No. But the things we did in the early days was, art-based graphics and stuff like that. I mean, it was very, you look at it now and I might cringe, but, you got to start somewhere. But what it did is it paved the way for a lot of stuff. And we had to be quite innovative because, like I said, we had no budget. We weren't given money or anything, we were given the cameras and that and the miniatures and told to, make something cool. So, we'd have to try and get really creative with trying to make the miniatures look as best as we could. We'd often go speak to Alan Merritt, and he'd give us some great advice on how to shoot and film miniatures. Like never show the back of them. You want to show the golden angle, and a lot of that comes from the way they had to shoot on the old Hasselblad cameras and stuff before they were digital. When they were film, and they were quite expensive to get processed, but they needed really high resolution images, and we go to him and ask him for advice and things like that. He was very, very tuned in to Games Workshop's IP. I mean, that was his job, was to look after it and to make sure that the message was out there. So he was great for that. We'd just make the miniatures look as best as we could. And we got better and better, as we went on. And then eventually, it wasn't that long when we were tasked with making a how to paint DVD. Mm-hmm. And this was weird. It was like, you talk about getting thrown in the deep end. We'd been going for a couple months at most at that point, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're releasing a new how to paint book, but we think we can add £5 to the book if we put a DVD on it. We want you guys to make it." So we're like, "Oh, okay." Well, how do you make a DVD? Because I didn't know at this point. Like, I'd never authored a DVD. We had to make it in 7 languages. and we had to put chapters on, we had to put menus and everything. So I was like, all right, well, let's film it first. And that's how I met Duncan.
Okay.
He just happened to be free, and he was scheduled to do to be the hands of the video, right?
Okay.
Because he'd been working on that project. So him and I just hit it off like amazingly well from the first time, and that was it. A firm friendship was formed after that.
That's nice.
And then we made the video, and it did phenomenally well. I mean, it's so aged now, but back then, you're talking 2010, 15 odd years ago, or whatever, 14, 15 years ago. It was really, really, top end stuff at that time. And we're really proud of it. And the guys working with Shane, he got stuck with having to do the foreign language things and try and fit the voices in. So some of them, they speak a lot longer than English, and you got to try and sort it out with the cuts. So the poor guy he had a hell of a job, and he pulled it off. He did a great job with it, which was awesome. It was a good time. And then after that, in fact, I'll rewind the clock a little bit. When I handed in my show reel, one of the videos I made was how to paint, because I didn't have anything to show. So I did a how to paint a Blood Angels video, right? Because that's the army I collected at the time, so I knew how to paint them. And that was one of the things that actually got me the job.
Okay.
So my manager, his exact words to me were like, "Hey, Rog, there were guys that were better than you, but you showed something with how to paint, and you also understood the one thing was that we had to sell miniatures, right?" And that's effectively what got me the job. So luckily I just said the right thing and made the right little video thing. But we wanted to actually do more how to paint tutorials. So, I went to my boss, I said, I got this idea, I want to try and do this. And he's like, okay, cool, see if you can work something out. So luckily, Duncan didn't have anything in his schedule. So I went to his schedule and I said, hey, can we get somebody free, Duncan free? And they were like, yeah, Duncan can come and help you. So we did some experimenting, and we did how to build I think it was a riptide, if I remember correctly. We were stuck in a corner somewhere in like this storage unit thing where we kept all the scenery for the photography, this old dusty room. And we kind of worked it out in there, and we go back to my boss and he'd have a look, and he'd be like, oh, can we try and change this and that? And then eventually I settled on the angles I liked. And he was like, yeah, that's it, we'll go with that. Nice. And then, we made a couple videos, and they saw the potential in it. They went to the CEO, which at the time, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Mark. Can't remember now. But anyway, they approved it and said yes. So they gave us the money to get another person in, and we put a presenter's job up. And I went straight down to Duncan, and I was like, Duncan, you got to come for this job. It's right up your street. And ironically, there were members in his army painting team at the time were going, no, don't do it. It's never going to work. Don't do that. You're taking risk. You're going to throw your career away and all that. And his manager came up to him and said, listen, if you can go for it, there'll always be a job here for it. So we'll keep it open just in case it doesn't work out.
Okay.
And then obviously there were 4 people that applied that we interviewed. Dunk was one of them, and then there were 3 other people. And they were good, but they just didn't have, what Dunk had.
What does he have? What does he have? Quantify it for us. What does he have?
Duncan has a natural, so there was a lot of training in getting him comfortable in front of the camera, and that can be trained, but there's some things that can't. And the thing that can't is Duncan's personality, in that he's very welcoming. Yes. He has zero ego. When I say this guy, my friend has zero ego. He has zero ego. He loves the hobby, and he loves people that are encouraged by the hobby. He loves people that love it, and that comes across with him. If you ever watch a video with him, he's passionate about what he does, and he loves teaching people, how to paint. And that's just something that comes across naturally to him. So, we all know the story of when he went into a hobby store when he was a kid, and the store manager laughed at him and told him, gave him bad advice and made him feel small, and that put Duncan off for quite a while. And he vowed that if he ever had the opportunity, he'd never be like that, which of course he's not. So, well over 1,000 painting tutorials now, including our Games Workshop ones and the Academy. He just keeps it fresh and just keeps going. So
it's really cool.
His magic thing is he's just approachable. He's just kind, and what you see on screen is how he is in real life.
it's like a kindly brother, or like a friend, like one of your older. If you got an older brother, it's like one of the friends of your older brother. It's like just kind of like a, you know that you could take the mickey out of you because he's a few years older than you or whatever, but he chooses not to. He chooses to be kind. And that's really cool, man. That's awesome. Yeah. And you mentioned you hit it off, and you mentioned that you kind of. Yeah, that's really cool, man. So then. I feel like we'd talk about this for so long. We could get like 3 or 4 different episodes out, but we need to move on. But you made the decision to strike out on your own, the two of you. So how did that come about? Was it a big step?
For me, I've always wanted to own my own business, right? I've always felt I wanted to go independent. But for me, I felt that Games Workshop had changed from what I remember it being. Mm-hmm. I don't fit well into corporate environments, and Games Workshop was becoming very corporate. And the video department got taken over, and it became the marketing department. And you would have been from a handful of us to suddenly like 100 people. Okay. Everything just became very corporate and lost. And for me, I felt that I'd done everything I could at Games Workshop at that time. I just didn't. See a future going forward at that point. And I thought, this is if we're going to go on our own, this is the time to do it now. I could see the opportunities there. I just said to Dunk, hey, I think this is it. Let's do something. So, we planned it for about a year.
Exit strategy.
Exit strategy. We've got everything, all our ducks in a row, shall we say?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
We made sure no new contracts were signed, etc., etc. And we just left. I handed in my notice first, and then Duncan handed in his a week later, and then everyone started to go, well, wait a minute, what's going off here? Uh-huh. And then we left, and we started the academy in my dining room.
Was it daunting? Because going in a salaried position, there's no such thing as security. But in a salaried position, you're probably as stable and as secure as you could be. So striking out your own self-employed business, was it a daunting prospect?
Yes, we have. So Games Workshop runs a thing called the share saver scheme, right? Mm-hmm. So luckily their share price had gone up quite a bit at that point. So the way it works is it takes about 3 years for your investment to come to fruition. Yeah. So you can use it as a savings account, so you'll never lose money on it. But what happens is you have the options after 3 years to buy a share price of what they were 3 years ago.
Okay.
So if the share price 3 years ago was £1 and the share price today is £10, you can buy the shares for £1 and sell them for 10.
Nice,
profit, right?
Cool. Yeah.
So we were just sitting there hoping that they weren't going to crash or anything like that. So we got our share saves done. We cashed in our share saves, which we knew would give us money for at least 6 months to give it a go. After that, then if it doesn't work, at least you're giving it a go.
Nice. And what was the plan? What was the plan? What was the plan? What was the objective? Because it's easy to look back now and be like, oh, you got a whole paint range, and you teamed up with these guys to do the awards, and so. But what was did you have a set initial plan, or was it just let's just see what happened?
I've got a little book which we called the Roger Heresy, right? And it was basically it's all our plans, and luckily my background in forecasting and all that sort of stuff kind of helped. So I could start to really plot, where we would go and to try and plot a plan for us and stuff like that. But I also knew that the hard work was done, and the hard work was, like anyone knows who starts anything like this, especially in this kind of hobby, it's actually building up an audience. But we knew we already had that audience. Yes. Because you got to remember that at the time that Duncan became the face of Games Workshop had removed all faces at that point. Yeah. And I had to fight to get him to show his face. Right. I was very insistent on it, and they eventually came around, and I won my argument with them that you want them to if you're going to show people how to paint, you don't just want to see hands. You want to show that person. You want it to be like somebody standing over your shoulder and talking to you and teaching you. And you can't build a relationship with can't build a relationship up with anybody over a long term if you can't see their face. You want to put a face to it, even if it's only the intro and the outro. It doesn't matter. Let's just put a face there. They didn't want to do it. And they were like, no, we're not putting any faces in Games Workshop anymore. None of that stuff's happening. We're getting rid of all of that and all that. But I was like, yeah, but you've got to do it in this case. And anyway, I won my argument, and they allowed Duncan's face to come. So he was at one point for a period of time. Yeah, the face of Games Workshop, although he hates that term. Sorry, Dunk, if you're listening to this. But he became the face of Games Workshop for a period of time. And right when all of this stuff was kicking off. So the timing was perfect. But we knew that I knew that the hard work was already done and that people would be interested to see what we're doing once we've left. But we didn't know whether they would stick around in that. So we knew we had to make quality content the best we possibly can. And we were also lucky that we weren't now restricted to how Games Workshop could do stuff, which obviously if you're working for that company, you've got to do the way they want things, which is understandable, and that's totally the way it is. But it would allow us to paint something like Star Wars Legion. It would allow us to do techniques that we might not be able to show. Because you've got to be all product aware, as they call it. You have to show everything to sell product, because they're a business, right? That's what they do.
Which is understandable.
So very aware of that. Where being independent allowed us to, do whatever we wanted and paint whatever miniatures we wanted, and we've always kept independent since that. It's the reason we don't do sponsorships or anything like that. Is we won't be beholden to anybody. We want to be 100% independent. And if we show you to paint something, it's as honest as we can, and it's the way Duncan would truly paint something to try and help people to really get the most out of their miniatures, because they're not cheap. We want people to enjoy their hobby and get the most out of it, and painting's a big part of that. So that was our motto.
Yeah, good. So for people who maybe aren't aware of the Duncan Rhodes Paint Academy, tell us what you offer, what you produce, what you create, and what opportunities you have for people to get involved right now.
So the Academy is basically, it was decided to be our one-stop place where you could come and learn everything about miniature painting, from the fundamentals to some more advanced techniques. We release videos every week, except if it's Christmas holidays or we're at Adepticon or something where we just can't get videos made there because we're not in the country, right? But generally, it's the place where you can come and we've got over 400 tutorials now. Each tutorial comes with a paint list. It comes with reference galleries. We have a great community online. We do painting challenges every month with new themes. The winners will get a unique pin that we get them, and then the overall winner, which Duncan and I decide on, will then get a 1 hour hobby chat with Dunk, where they can ask him any questions, basically like a one-on-one lesson if they want, or just a chat, about hang out and hobby, whatever they want to do. And then we also do giveaways every month too, which is quite cool. So that's basically what it is. And it's a subscription service, and we charge $3.99 a month, which is, it's the price of a cup of coffee, right? And you're getting brand new content, painting content every week, and it's all high end. I say high end, it's all high end produced stuff, 3 camera setup. And we do all kinds of miniatures, from big ones to small ones to different brands. This week alone, we're doing 2 different companies. We're doing an Old World, and we're doing one of Duncan's favorite games is BattleTech. So we're doing something along those lines. So we have quite a lot. The Americans love BattleTech. It's so huge over there.
I saw it. I can't remember. I don't know where it's from, but I saw something on one of the groups that I'm part of the other day, and it talks about the top 10 selling.
Gamma.
Is that what it was? Yeah, and BattleTech was second.
They run a survey. And obviously for the American audience, right? They run a survey, and obviously 40K is at the top, but BattleTech was second.
Yeah, it surprised me that, but in a good way.
Star Wars Legion didn't even appear in the top 10.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? So let's just let's just stop for a second and talk about high-end quality there. So obviously making a zombie slasher film in university is very, very different from doing a painting tutorial, or I guess it is, because I am a layman, of course. So how did you because your side of things is very much the recording and the quality and how it looks and things, right? So how did you arrive at the gold standard of this sort of thing? Is it something that was pre-established, or is it something that you've established through trial and error and also learning from other people?
No, I established it because I knew that if you're doing educational videos, right, there's 2 types of videos you can make. You've got educational and you've got entertainment, and entertainment's a completely different kettle of fish. But educational, there's 3 stages to it. You need to tell people what they're going to learn, you need to show them what they're going to learn, and then at the end you remind them. And you being a teacher will understand, the basics of that sort of stuff. So I approached the videos in the same way, and I wanted to keep it as clear as possible to what they do, because they're there to learn. So, it would be, Duncan would introduce something, would show the palette, and then we'd show him applying paint to the miniature, and then we'd cut, and we'd then show what he's painted so people could have a look at it, and then come back and you go through the next stages and things like that. And then at the end would be a gallery shot, if you will, a 360 of the finished model, and then he would tell you what the main points about painting that specific miniature would be. And then we'd rinse and repeat, and for us anyway, that's been largely successful. But we always have to maintain that it's literally about teaching people how to paint. We're not trying to do something clever like paint a miniature in a swimming pool or something like that, which falls under the entertainment thing. It's literally just teaching people how to paint, and that's important to us.
Is your skill development and process of practice is still evolving, or is it something that you feel you've
absolutely.
So what have you changed recently? Is there anything you can think of that you've changed recently to improve things?
There's little things like you're always ticking away at it. Like you might look at a shot that you've edited and go, maybe I'm going on that a bit long, or I'm not going on it long enough, or maybe I can punch in a little bit, or or maybe let me check the camera settings, maybe I can just get it a little bit fractionally sharper that could improve it, or what can I do to tweak a little bit of the sound. It's just little things like that all the time. And then when we do shoot something that's a bit different, maybe because obviously YouTube's a very different kettle of fish, right? The whole YouTube thing has changed from education to entertainment these days. Yeah. So sometimes you've got to maybe reshoot, and you've got to do the intro a bit differently for YouTube and things like that. Like when we did the Carcharodon Marines, we did a Jaws parody. So you've got to then change the way you shoot things there, which adds a little bit of, from my point of view, will add a little bit of change to how you'd normally do things. So you let a little bit of your creativity come out at that point, and you have a little bit of fun with it too. And Duncan's always game for trying new things too, like that. So, so you've got to keep it at least fresh for yourself, and you've got to try and make sure that what you don't forget what your aim of the video is. And our aim is literally to teach people how to paint. And you have to be very aware of that, because it's very easy to slip down the road of trying to do something completely different. And if you ever decide to go down that route, that's fine. That becomes a very different video at that point. But if you're doing a painting one, and you want to teach people how to genuinely paint a miniature so they can go away and follow along and then be happy with the result at the end, which is our aim, then you've got to be aware of what you're doing, and just keep on a single track with that, I think.
So if we're watching, say, a 15 or 20 minute tutorial video,
yes,
what goes on that we don't see, and how long does that all take?
So on average, depending on the miniature, right? So all the Games Workshop miniatures we could shoot in a day, okay? But some of the later ones, they're filling it with so much detail, that can take a day and a half, sometimes even 2 days to film, because there's literally, the amount of paint you need can almost double with the amount of detail that they're putting on the miniatures these days. So what we do is we film Monday to Wednesday. On a Thursday and Friday, that's when the editing process takes place, building the website, etc. But at that point, Duncan's then building the miniatures for next week, writing his scripts. When I say scripts, just his painting recipe, shall we say. And a few notes if there's something important he wants to say. And then we come in on the Monday morning, and we start rehearsing. So we rehearse every shot. Basically what we do is we do a couple rehearsals of each shot, just so that Duncan's comfortable in what he's saying. I will then sense check, or the new guy, Jack, he will then sense check and make sure that everything is on point. And it's clear, because it's always good to have a second set of ears just to make sure that what Duncan is saying is clear. But he's done it so many times, and he's so good at what he does. He's his own worst critic. So sometimes he'll be like, oh, no, let me do that again. I want to try and say it like this. And then we'll go. But once because once you put paint on a miniature, depending on the stage, it's very, very hard to go back and repaint that and get it done. So you've got to be, that's why we rehearse beforehand, just make sure that everything is clear, make sure the cameras are all lined up properly, he's in the right area for focus, because you've got a very narrow depth of field when you're zoomed in on a miniature, because some of them are so small. So you've got to come up in the right place. And then, we just punch through it that way, and we have it, we have a schedule going out about a month. and we try and put a bit of variety in there. We'll try and match up with new releases. We try and put a bit of variety in there, so it's not always 40K, for instance, or whatever. We did Daredevil the other week. We did Moonstone's Fairy last week, I think it was, the Tooth Fairy thing. Just a variety, and also it's nice for Dunk too, because painting something different with a different paint style, maybe he'll learn a new skill from it. So we also edit while we're filming. So as between shots, because some shots might take an hour and a half between shots. So if he's edge highlighting something like a Primaris Marine, that takes up. If anyone knows and they've edge highlighted a Primaris Marine, there's a lot of panels on those bad boys, and it just takes time. So it can take about an hour and a half to edge highlight that, and then we'll come back and we'll get ready for the next shot, and we do it that way.
So that sounds quite, I would say long-winded, that sounds negative, but that sounds like there's a lot of stuff in the background there. You mentioned about a video a week, and you've also mentioned about a lot of practicing and things, right? So there's a lot of, we've got the process nailed. Like I said, Duncan and I've probably made round about, must be close to 1,000 painting tutorials now, including our Time at Games workshop, tip of the days we did, full painting guides, and we've done over 400 videos now for the Academy alone. So we've got a massive library on the Academy website, and we're shooting 2 videos this week. Next week we've got another 2 lined up, I think. I'll have to check the schedule, but we just continue making content for that, for our subscribers. But we've got the process nailed, and I think when you're trying to churn that much work out, you've got to find the efficiencies where you can, and you've got to try shave time off as you can to try and fit in as much content as you can, but not burn out either. So there's enough time just to breathe. And I think we've got it nailed in our current format. Yeah, it's interesting. As you kind of do stuff, you kind of find your own way of doing things, and you kind of find the way that works for you. And and I wouldn't consider myself anywhere near these individuals, so don't get me wrong when I quote them. But one of the people that I really appreciate when it comes to kind of being creative is Stephen King. He just says that I get out my own way, I just write stuff, and I don't really go back to it, because if I go back to it, I start thinking, and ahhing, pulling stuff out, putting stuff back in, and it ends up getting worse the more I think about it. He doesn't listen to critics. He doesn't read reviews or anything like that. He just does what he's doing and then just moves on. And then equally, I watched a video just today actually about the Beatles, and they talked about how they wrote music and how they composed songs and how they arranged songs and different things. And it was very much the same. It was like, well, we weren't trained to read music. We can't read music, and we haven't been trained, so we just do stuff that feels good and looks good to us, and then we leave it. And because we're not constrained by the rules, we're free. So how is your approach as an organization? Do you watch other videos in this world? And no, so you like the Stephen King and the Beatles one?
The reason I don't, and I've done this from the very beginning, is like there's some I've watched, like some of them I enjoy. I enjoy watching Jordan Sorcery, but that's more informative, entertainment. Miniac makes some great videos, Ninjon does as well. Guys like that, Squidmore, and them all make really cool content. But some of them is quite more on the entertainment side of it. But I have to be careful. I don't want to get too influenced by what they're doing and take us away from what we're trying to do, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense.
We want people... we want people to be able to paint their miniatures and be happy with it. Because if you can teach somebody to paint something and they get a great reward out of it and they feel very proud afterwards, they're going to keep coming back, and that's what we want, but we want to give people the confidence to paint and to know that, we can give them the skills that they need to paint any army that they want, any miniature that they want. And in fact, we've recently started to do a new section on the website, not a new section, new type of video. We do more advanced painting. So this is more your heavy metal style or type of thing. We'll start putting more advanced techniques in them and things like that. Wet blending, glazing. And the first video we did that for was Fugan, because he kind of really lends himself to that with the armor and things like that. We don't use airbrushes either. And the reason for that, and people have said, why don't you guys use airbrushes? The reason we haven't done so far is because of cost for most people to get into it. And we don't want to shut people out and just because we know who our audience are. Our audience are intermediate or beginners. We're not aiming for the high-end audience. There's guys out there that can do incredible jobs on that. Angel Heraldas and that are incredible painters where you look if you want to go for your high-end painting. So for us, it's more, we know we want to aim at the beginners and things like that. And, we get a lot of people that, just picked up their first paintbrush and they bought their first starter set, whatever, and they come into our website and we've got a starter section on there to teach you the fundamentals. In fact, we have a full course we designed teaching you the fundamentals. So if you learn that, you go through that course, then you'll be able to start to apply that with practice and paint anything you want. And then you'll start to develop your skills. You'll start to want to learn more techniques, and then those are on offer. And then eventually, you might want to enter, Golden Demon or something like the Circodes Masters or, Crystal Skull or whatever, Crystal Brush. And you want to take your painting further. But we like to be the guys that you come to first. We kind of look at ourselves as your primary school, secondary school, and high school. Come to us first, and then you can graduate to, just to something if you want to take it higher. Most people are just happy to have a nice looking army that people in their gaming club or whatever turn around and go, wow, that looks really cool.
I think that's the key. I think that's the key. That's why I first started watching the videos, and that's why I still continue to watch your videos. It's because I don't personally, and nothing against anyone that does, but I don't want to enter any competitions. I don't want to paint at that highest level. At the moment, I'm painting a lot of A Song of Ice and Fire, and there's 12 models per unit. I just want that. I don't want to spend 12 times the amount of time on one guy. I want to divide that time between the 12 individual models and get them up to that really good tabletop standard, And so I really like this intermediate level. I wouldn't even necessarily count myself as that, but I really like that, and it's a really, really valuable place. And it's great that people are putting content together for it instead of just everybody clamoring to be the top of the tree.
Yeah, I think sometimes people might get, how do I say this? They might enjoy. You go on Instagram and you see high-end painters putting their stuff on Instagram, and I think it can put a lot of people off because you look and you go, my miniatures don't look like that guy or that girl's miniatures. But at the end of the day, they might have spent 20 years practicing, right?
Exactly.
But you're looking at a miniature that's somebody, you're just looking at those images, you got no idea. It could have been 200 hours worth of painting to get there.
Yeah.
So what we try and do is we want to break down the barriers, right? There should be no barriers to painting miniatures. The whole point of painting miniatures is, as we all know who love it, is it's a fun hobby. It takes you away from the realities of life, and you get to relax, and you get to go and meet new friends. You get to go and game or whatever you want to do. Yeah. And like you say, some people want to collect armies, and if you've got 70 miniatures in your army, if you've got a horde army, which can be more, you say you don't want to spend 40 hours per miniature. You're just never going to get it done, and that's a whole different discipline. High-end painting, that's why they do incredible work on things like busts, or they'll build a diorama where there's two, or the most they might do is a squad of 5 or 10 Marines or something like that. But most people just want to paint their army, and they want it to a standard that they're really happy and proud of, and that's what we try and aim to do with our videos.
Yeah, and I think going back to what you're talking about before about the welcoming nature, you've got a bunch of forums as well that I know people can join.
Yes.
It's also about associating with something and someone as well. And so the videos are very welcome, as you mentioned. You seem like an awesome guy, very welcoming too. And I wish we could hear a little bit more from you as we kind of go through. That'd be amazing too, because it's the first time that I've heard. I'm a little bit like you with podcasting, so I don't really listen to too many podcasting. So I don't know how many times you've been interviewed, but it's just amazing getting to know you a little bit more. And you kind of just you can share your minis there, and you can just associate with other people that are into that sort of thing. It's like a fraternity, a group, and a brotherhood, right?
It is, and they're very supportive too in the community, in our community. We have a very popular a Facebook group for miniature painting too, which one of our team members, Joe, set up, and I think we're on. I might be lying, but I'm going to put a number out there. It's close to maybe 18,000 members in our Facebook group.
Nice.
And there they just go and share their miniatures and things like that. So, we're getting anywhere from, 20 to 100 odd members a day joining up, depending on what part of the week. And it's just a great place for people to show off their hard work. And on our forum, we run the challenges every month, which is great because it encourages you to try new techniques maybe. Maybe it's that thing just to push your skills a little bit further. Maybe paint something new that you never painted before, which might inspire you and get you out of a rut. Or you just want to go and paint something because I want to paint that miniature. Why the hell not? And those are very popular. Very hard to judge. It's awful judging them because there are so many good things, and you've got to start going down to the small nitty gritty things. It's like
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's cool, man. Well, unfortunately, we have to call it a day there. We're talking to you during one of your work days, and we really appreciate you giving a little bit of your time on a work day to talk to us. It's fantastic. Thank you. But there's so much more to talk to. We need to talk about your hobby journey. We need to talk about things that you've played, things that you've painted. We also need to talk about the amazing paint range, and we also need to talk about the future and different potential involvements in painting competitions and anything else that might be coming. But that'll come for another time. Hopefully, you can come back on the future and we can have another little bit of a chat. But in the meantime, Roger, thanks a lot for talking to us. Really appreciate learning about your history and your spearfishing history with your leopard skin loincloth in South Africa. Spearfishing. Well, thanks a lot for your time. All right, thanks a lot for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Norris. We'll see you soon.
So there you go, episode 230, best time for a dentist appointment. All wrapped up there. Thanks again to Roger for coming onto the show. Overriding feelings, just a nice guy, really good guy with loads of cool and interesting stuff. And now I've kind of, met him, not that I'm anyone in particular, but now I've met both him and Duncan, just really nice people, really. You kind of just want them to really do well because they just seem to come across as really nice people. Same as Richard Carlisle that came on the show last week, and many of the people that have been on the Paint All the Minis podcast episodes, and many people that are just in the hobby community, just really nice, good people. So it's really good just to be able to hear their story and just to kind of empathize and have a bit of compassion and have a bit of fellowship with all those people. And you kind of, hey, the guy kind of tries to do the same things I kind of do, and that's good. So that's awesome. So hopefully Roger can come on again in the next month or so, and we can chat about the things that we didn't chat about there. I think I mentioned them in pre-show. In the pre-ramble, I'd like to talk to them about the paint range. Like, how did the tooth-in paint range come to be? Whose idea was it? How did it go? They work with things. Transatlantic Games are the distributors. So did they approach them? Did he approach them? Was it all part of Roger's heresy? I'd like to talk about Roger's heresy quite a lot more. I think he talks about that in the show, doesn't he? Roger's heresy, where it was like his plans and his ideas in the background and things like that. So yeah, there you go. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please make sure that you do reach out if you got the time and the inclination. It's not a requirement, but do reach out and say what you liked about the show or what you like about certain things, because it's a good little bit of motivation to kind of keep going, and it's good to know what other people like. Because if I kind of know what you like a little bit more, then I'll put a little bit more of what you like in it. So if we're making a big stew and you really like carrot, I can put a little bit more carrot in the stew. If you don't like carrot, then unlucky because you're getting carrot anyway, but there'll be less than if you don't. I don't know. I'm talking nonsense, as I always do. Post-ramblage, what I've been doing hobby-wise this week. Hobby-wise, I started another big batch of Baratheons. So I've started a unit, what is called the Kingsmen. They are big great sword. Is it a bastard sword? I don't know what the difference between a great sword and a bastard sword are. I think I'd rather say bastard sword because it feels like you're getting away with saying a naughty word, but it's not naughty, is it? Because it is a bastard sword. Look at that bastard sword! No one's going to have a go at you because it's technically correct, anatomically correct. It's a little bit like when you're in biology and you do sex ed and you say penis. No, I can't say penis. It's an anatomical term. Got a very interesting story about a science teacher who decided to use non-anatomically correct terms when teaching sex ed. But I'm not going to go into that because it could be potentially a liable complaint coming my way, or potentially slander. That was a very interesting story. A student came into my classroom and talked to me about the correct anatomical terms of certain appendages. It was a good story. So yeah, if you catch me on my own and I'm not being recorded, I'll talk to you about that. Jolly good fun. But anyway, if you are teaching sex ed, ensure that you are using the correct anatomical terms for different people's body parts. What was I talking about? Yes, painting Baratheons. They've got bastard swords or great swords. I don't know. Big two-handed guys. What have I done with them? Done the armor, done the tabards, done the sword hilts. I was actually painting. What did I paint when I was on the chat to Roger? I can't remember. But I'm trying to paint and continue to mooch around painting whilst I'm doing the show, whilst also giving the person the right level of attenzione. to make sure that they feel valued and wanted. I'm very interested to know what you guys are painting. I'd like to know, so swing by the Discord. I forgot to mention that in pre-show actually, but there you go, I'm human, what are you going to do? Make sure you swing by, tell us what you're up to. I'd like to include that in the post-ramble. I want to give a few more shout outs to people that are forming the background group, the quality control group, and the different thing. I mentioned 3 gentlemen last week. I want to give a big shout out to John. John has been husbanding the Facebook group for a long time, especially when I took a break away from it. So thank you, John. I really appreciate that. Your positivity is a constant joy, a constant flame that I warm my hands on. So thank you for John. I really do appreciate you. Travis, Mr. Travis from Tabletop CP, he's kicking around in the background in the Paint All Minis group also. Who else is in there? My lovely wife Charlotte is in there. She is doing a lot of the administration work in the background for Paint All the Minis. She is instrumental getting the website back up. The website is now back up, paintalltheminis.co.uk. You can go and check out the stuff that's on there. So thank you to her for all this stuff. Weirdly, she listens to the show. I don't know why she listens to it. It's a little bit embarrassing, isn't it, when your wife listens to your podcast, because she just calls out all your bullshit, doesn't she? Like, you said this in one of the episodes. You don't do that. You're liar, talking shit. Maybe she does. I don't know. But if you listen, Charlotte, please feel free to call out my bullshit. Maybe we could have a section where she can chime in and she can maybe fact check. She can keep me honest. So if ever there's something that she listens to which is simply not true, maybe she can chirp in and chime in and set the record straight. Not that I think there are anything. I don't know. Is there anything? I don't know. If it is, I think it's an innocent mistake. But I think that's enough of the post-ramble. Let me know how Friday release is working for you all. I think Friday release is quite good. You kind of look forward to it for the week maybe, and it's a nice little, head into the weekend. Maybe you head into the hobby desk and you got something to listen to. I don't know. And anything else that you might feel is pertinent or salient that you want to bring forward, I'd be more than willing to listen. Can't say that I'll agree, or I can't say that I will enable it to happen, but yeah, now's the right time to kind of do this. This is a new little feature. So I'm going to give you an idea of the people that are booked onto the show for the next few episodes, and if you've got any specific questions for them, then please let me know. Must state as a warning, maybe a warning, I don't know. They might not come on, so they're booked into the show, like they've agreed to come on. And if you've got any questions specifically for these individuals, then let me know, and I'll try and get them in. So coming up very, very soon, so literally within the next 24 hours, I'm speaking to Mr. Tim Prow of Die Hard Miniatures, formerly of Games Workshop. So if you've got any questions for Tim, you can email me. I've given that address already, or the Discord. You can come on and send me those questions, and I'll try and ask them. Mr. Mike Tunez of Firelock, so that's Blood and Plunder, etc. He's coming on also. So if you've got any questions for Mike, please let me know. Mr. Colin Stone, the finance director from Warlord Games, he is coming onto the show also in early April. And also Mr. Graham Davey, formerly of GW, but also now of Grey for Now Games, who do 200 hours as one of the games. Test of Honor is something that you might know that he's been involved in. So if you've got any questions for Tim Prow, Mike Tunez, Colin Stone, or Graham Davey, just fire them to me somehow. Make sure you tell me who the question is for, because I don't want to be asking Graham Davey about the finances of Warlord if that's not appropriate. So make sure you tell me the guest, and make sure you tell me the question you might like me to get into the rotation, and I'll try and get that in there. Make sure they're appropriate, and make sure they're not inflammatory in nature. I try to avoid politicizing anything. I also try to avoid time stamping anything. So, but if it's a good question, I'll put it in there. So again, part of the Paint All the Minis family is being involved and having a bit of agency in the stuff that we do. On top of that, if you do have any ideas for guests, it doesn't necessarily need to be, Jimmy Big Nuts in the hobby. If you got somebody that's just a friend who's really interesting, or a friend who's overcome some absurdity could be absurdity. If you've overcome some absurdity, or you've overcome some adversity, then that might be a good person, dude. You know what? This is no word of a lie. I've got the word enunciation on my, I have these Post-its on my laptop, and enunciation is one of the words that I try and remember when I'm doing it. I always do these in one take. I never do multiple takes, because For reasons. This is long enough anyway. But I actually wrote Annunciation in giant letters on one of my post-its on my computer screen. And there you go. Overcoming absurdity. That's called an egg con, by the way. Egg con. So if something's an egg con, it's when you say it wrong inadvertently. So acorn or egg corn. So if you've ever overcome absurdity, then well done you. But anyway, that is enough of the post-ramble before I drop any more of those terrible enunciations. I hope that you have a great week. I hope that you're looking forward to whatever it is that you are getting up to in your spare time. That's pretty much it of the post-ramble. It's great to be back. It's great to be with you. I hope that you're enjoying it weekly. Please let us know if you are enjoying it, because all of those little interactions is what we do it for. Check out the website if you're not already. Come and get involved in the website if you want to. Come and write some content if you want to. Let your candle shine brighter. It's not about us blowing your candle out to make ours burn brighter. It's the opposite. We want to make all the candles come together to make them all burn brighter. But that's enough of the post-ramble. Until next time we're together, keep enunciating.